And also this year, we learned that Alex Boyd Knight, Dominican author, politician, and attorney, died on August 29th. Boyd Knight served as Speaker of the House of Assembly from 2000 to 2020, making her the longest serving in Dominica's history. She also served as chairperson of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarian from 2010 to 2013 and has presented numerous papers and lectures on issues such as family law, women's rights, and domestic violence across the Commonwealth at inter-parliamentary forums. She is also remembered for her love of cuisine and for the 2012 publication Women in Parliament in Dominica, Past and Present. Alex Boyd Knight was recognized as Speaker Emeritus during the first meeting of the first session of the term sitting of Parliament on February 10, 2020. And in December, news that the well-known Dominican public health expert Dr. Carissa Etienne had died in Washington was reported on December 1st. Dr. Carissa Etienne, Director Emeritus, whose career began in her native Dominica as a medical officer at the Princess Margaret Hospital in 1977. Dr. Etienne began her first 5-year term as director of the Pan-American Health Organization Regional Office for the Americas of the World Health Organization in February 2013. She was elected for a second term as the director of the Pan-American Sanitary Bureau on 27 September 2017, a position in which she held until January of 2023. And as I said, I wanted to begin our review of human interest stories of 2023 with a homage to some great Dominicans, some great people. I knew each and every one of them. Olin Bully, the first chief cultural officer, was very instrumental in getting the Dominica Writers Guild off the ground. As a matter of fact, on his CV, he mentions as consultant to the Dominica Writers Guild as one of his achievements. And also Ken Richards. I know Ken Richards from a very early time when he was a singer in a band called the Weedies. I saw him develop. I saw him go through his stages, especially his stints with the BBC World Service, the BBC Caribbean Service. Alex Boyd Knight, the same thing. Once you've been brought up in Roseau, you will tend to know people from Roseau. Irving Shillingford himself, he was a member of the Cavalier Carnival Club and the Cavalier Cricket Club. He and Dan Shillingford, his cousin, he was always in Kennedy Avenue. We used to watch them playing cricket in the botanical gardens. So I mean, these are people who I have known for over 50 years, including Lord Solo. I remember as a youth, as a teenager, listening to calypsos because we live very close to the Arawak cinema where most of the calypso shows were held in the early 70s. And I can remember seeing Lord Solo in his blue messenger uniform. He was a messenger for the government, and with his afro and his shades, and I remember his songs that he sang. Especially, I mentioned Martin's Cemetery, which has become into folklore, calypso folklore. So we lost some great persons this year in 2023. And on behalf of my wife, we just like to offer our deepest condolences to the family and friends of not only the aforementioned, but all those who lost someone, a relative, a friend, or maybe just someone you admire this year.
He's revolutionary, remarkable, and very large.
In review, the human interest stories. Yes, and the time is 60 minutes moving down past 10 o'clock. We are counting down the final minutes, an hour and minutes left of 2023. And it's time now for us to turn our attention to some of the major human interest stories that took place in 2023. Well, February 13 was World Radio Day, and World Radio Day 2023 was celebrated on Monday 13th of February. The theme for the 12th edition of World Radio Day was Radio and Peace. According to UNESCO, independent radio acts as a pillar for conflict prevention and peace building. I was impressed by the flood of videos and posts from around the world highlighting the various aspects of the humble radio. And just out of interest, my wife and I are members of the Radio Society of Great Britain since 2014, and my studies at the Open University in subjects such as wireless technologies prompted my entry into amateur radio, or ham radio as the Americans would say. So much so that I was inspired to begin my own podcast, first to join the celebrations, which led to me launching a podcast idea to add to my back catalogue of publications and digital assets. And what resulted was the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast on February 19th. Between February and April, we produced some 15 weekly episodes and entertained some great guests, including Rasmo, a gender rights and anti-domestic violence campaigner, Celia Sorrento, award-winning poet and author, as well as Yakima Coffee. And we also had former broadcast meteorologist Monique Tawia and her husband Andrew, who spoke to us on the highs and lows of journalism and the launching of a full-service public relations agency. We also had Greg Barnes, former three-time Calypso King in Dominica, one of the former lead singers and founding member of the Gaylords and former Hot Chocolate vocalists. And as I said, we launched this first podcast called Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, and our format featured a news section followed by one or more features, including a program dedicated to Olimboli and the reenactment of the 1800 Good Friday and Easter sermons of Reverend Charles Peters. and a feature on the Ketchup Man, who is the subject of our next human interest story. But before I leave, let me tell you that the subject of the World Radio Day, UNESCO has released the theme for World Radio Day 2024, and it is Radio, a century informing, entertaining, and educating. And I'm sure that you may have seen a couple of our World Radio Day visuals on our Facebook page. When we return, we'll be telling you something about a Dominican sailor that went adrift, found himself in Colombia, and was given a boat by a World International food processor. Stay tuned. It is now 20 minutes after 10. So also in the month of February, the plight of a Dominican sailor, Elvis Francois, 47, from Anse de May, went viral, attracting international headlines, reporting his ordeal adrift at sea for 24 days. After hearing about Francois' story, The Independent wrote, Heinz leads search for a man who says he survived a month at sea. Heinz appeals for ketchup boy, Elvis Francois, said the Fortune website. Where is the ketchup boat guy Heinz is looking for the sailor, said AST.com. Meanwhile, the Washington Post said Heinz is searching for the ketchup guy who survived at sea, adding the company wants to locate the man identified in the news reports as Elvis Francois so that we can buy him a boat. And the Business Insider wrote, a man survived for nearly a month eating almost nothing but ketchup. Now Heinz is trying to find him and help him buy a new boat. And the Daily Star published this headline, Miracle Castaway tells of a rough 24 days at sea living on ketchup. And Emo News, a local Dominican news outlet, broke the news in a February 22 interview with Francois at Anse de May, in which he explained how it all began. Francois told Emo News that he had been living in St. Martin for a year when in December 2022 he was on a yacht doing some repairing when the boat went adrift. He said he tried eating seaweed and that he was picked up on January 15 by the Colombian Navy. The last we heard of this story is that a conference call did take place between representatives of Heinz and Francois. The Guardian reports Heinz had issued a separate statement to the Guardian that the company and Francois are working out the logistical details of getting him his new boat, adding, Emo News, a media outlet in Dominica, where Francois is from, had reported in a brief Facebook post on Sunday that Heinz representatives met with the sailor over a Zoom conference call 2 days earlier. Now, according to an online edition of the Business Insider dated April 28, 2023, Heinz offered the fisherman who survived 24 days at sea a new boat with GPS, but he didn't get enough money to buy one with a navigation system, adding the ketchup boat guy who was offered a new fishing boat with GPS by Heinz says he feels kind of disappointed after only getting enough money for a small boat and engines. Hines offered the fisherman who survived 24 days at sea a new boat with GPS, but he didn't get enough money to buy one with a navigation system. According to the insider, Hines gave Francois 40,000 EC Caribbean dollars, equal to 14,800 US dollars, for a new boat. Hines asked Francois if he wanted to receive money or for the company to buy him one, and he chose to take the money, he said. The 47-year-old told Insider the cash couldn't pay for a sailboat like the one he had previously, but that he could at least get a small vessel and resume fishing right away. He added he didn't think he could ask for more because he's from a very small village and doesn't have proper education. You can't force anything in life. I just have to accept it as it is, he said. He spent EC 18,000 on a small boat and EC 20,000 on two motors. Insider has viewed documentation of the sum Hines paid him and receipts for what Francois has spent. Francois said, I wouldn't go out in the water with one engine because it's too risky, and that's why I had to buy two engines, he said. And also happening in February, journalist Laura Trevelyan and representatives of the Trevelyan family were on Grenada on Monday, February 27, to attend a specially convened reparations forum hosted by the Grenada Reparations Committee in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. The historic event, at which 7 family members descended from Sir John Trevelyan, who had interests in 5 plantations and over 1,000 enslaved Africans on Grenada, were present and saw the reading of the apology letter and the handing over of the document to the Prime Minister, who duly handed over the same over to representatives of the CARICOM Reparations Commission and the Grenada National Reparations Committee. Chair of the Grenadian National Reparation, Ali Gill, said, I want to salute all the Rastafarian brothers and sisters who are with us this morning. The Rastafarians for decades have continued to carry the torch of black consciousness, repatriation, legalization or decriminalization of their sacrament of the cannabis, and have continued to remain true to their faith despite all the challenges that they have faced throughout history. Meanwhile, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Barbadian historian Professor Sir Hilary Beckles remarked, we heard reference of the role of Rastafari from the moment those Africans returned from Ethiopia, having gone to fight against the fascism of the Italians, and then returned to the Caribbean and began the Rastafari movement. They began to speak about African history, African culture, African dignity and reparations. So it has been 100 years since Rastafari is pushing this movement, and we know this to be true because we know our history. That slavery had left behind the scars, the reduction in the love of blackness, the diminished respect for all Africanness. All these things were part of that white supremacy system that left many black people ashamed of their Africanness. It was Rastafari who demanded the restoration of those identities and, quite frankly, began to teach us all how to respect who we are and how to fight this legacy. Meantime, Grenada's 9th Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, also praised the Rastafari movement, saying, and like Professor Beckles and Mr. Gill, I too want to single out the Rastafarian community for special commendation. He said, when I was in Barbados at the University of the West Indies, I read a book by a Rastafarian lecturer called Rastafari in Transition. Adding, I will admit that I too, suffering from the legacy of a West India education, properly viewed the Rastafarian community with a certain level of disdain or disinterest or apathy. And after reading that book, it emphasized to me that it certainly created revolution in my thinking, and that perhaps more than any other group, at least in the English-speaking Caribbean, they were single-handedly responsible for creating the consciousness that I needed as a descendant of ancestors that were enslaved in the Caribbean, to understand that reparations is not just about material reparations, but it is essentially about the need to mentally educate ourselves about our own history, about the crime of slavery and its lasting impact on us even today. The centerpiece of the event was the addition of the affixing of the signatures to what is no doubt a historic document, to which 107 family members have also signed, publicly acknowledging and apologizing for the family's involvement during the period of enslavement on Grenada. Meanwhile, the long-serving British broadcaster Laura Trevelyan, whose career at the BBC started in 1993 as a researcher for BBC and an assistant producer for Newsnight, a current affairs program, announced on March 17 that she was leaving the corporation to join the Caribbean's fight for slavery reparations. In 2006, Trevelyan published a book, A Very British Family, The Trevelyan and Their World, about her family with no mention of her ancestors' role in slavery. She told reporters that this hidden secret was revealed when the name Trevelyan appeared in the database Legacies of British Slavery by the University College of London, published in 2013. Trevelyan was commissioned by the BBC to visit Grenada to film a documentary, Grenada Confronting My Family's Slave-Owning Past, in May of 2022. And let me just remind you, you are listening to 2023 in Review. My name is Albert Williams, and I'm looking at some of the human interest stories that occurred over the year, which I found interesting. And you just heard me speaking about the handing over of a letter of apology from the Trevelyan family for their role in slavery in Grenada. It is 28 minutes moving up on 11, 28 minutes moving up on the final hour for 2023. And also in February 28th, a high-level delegation of Royal African traditional leaders visited Jamaica from February 28 to March 6. The 15-member royal delegation from Africa, which comprised of 7 kings and 8 queens, were engaged in a series of activities hosted by the CARICOM Reparations Commission in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. Several symposia and participated in discussions on how the transatlantic slave trade affected the continent. Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, speaking at the Reparations Forum held in Grenada earlier that month, said that the arrival of the 7 kings and the 8 queens would continue discussions that started with the Trevelyan's apology. Among the topics discussed were what role did African monarchs play in selling their fellow Africans to colonizers to work as slaves on plantations across the Americas and the Caribbean. Beckles noted the slave trade ravaged many of the African monarchies that prospered for centuries before colonialism. And in the month of April, His Majesty King Charles III expressed his consent for an investigation into the British monarchy's historical links with the transatlantic slavery. According to The Guardian, on its website, Buckingham Palace released a statement after it was contacted by The Guardian about the extensive history of successive British monarchs' involvement and investment in the enslavement of African people. Previously seen documents, The Guardian says, have been revealed that show the link between the British monarchy and the slave trade. The Guardian newspaper said the document recording Colston's share transfer to William III was found in the archives by Dr. Brooke Newman, a historian at Virginia Commonwealth University, on a research trip to London in January. The record, dated 1689, it said, proves that King William III was the beneficiary of shares in a company that traded enslaved Africans. The shares were worth about £1,000 and came from Edward Colston, who was a top official at the slave trading Royal African Company. The lead investigator and researcher for the project is Camilla de Koning, a historian at Manchester University. She is conducting a PhD project that is co-sponsored by Historic Royal Palaces, which manages several sites. Her project will explore the monarch's involvement in the slave trade and engagement with the empire, and is expected to conclude in 2026. The human interest story.
Four Corners, the Dread Podcast.
And on April 25th, Harry Belafonte, American singer, actor, and civil rights activist, died. Belafonte, who popularized calypso music with international audiences in the 1950s and 1960s, is also credited as having the first million-selling LP by a single artist. Belafonte was a supporter of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 1960s and was one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s confidants. According to Wikipedia, after Martin Luther King had been arrested for his involvement in the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, Belafonte traveled to northern cities to spread awareness and acquire donations for those struggling with social segregation and oppression in the South. And also in April, the BBC reported that British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak rejected a call from Labour MP Bell Ribeiro Adi to offer a meaningful apology for Britain's role in colonialism and the slave trade, and to make reparations. The call request came during a session of Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons, according to the BBC. The PM, who gave an emphatic no, added, "Trying to unpick our history is not the right way forward." And as you know, reparations is an ongoing quest by the Caribbean Reparations Commission and other commissions, reparations commissions. Indigenous people are asking for restitution and reparations for the harm that colonialism from various European states has unleashed on our populations. Nevertheless, we move on into May with more related news. On May 6 was a national holiday in the United Kingdom, marking the official coronation of Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. The lavish ceremony, steeped in English tradition, took place at Westminster Abbey. Charles acceded to the throne on September 8, 2022, upon the death of his mother, Elizabeth II. But what does this mean for reparative justice? I took up this subject in a lengthy article published May 7th on our sister website, Quest for the African Wool. And Charles was born in Buckingham Palace during the reign of his maternal grandfather, George VI, and was 3 years old when his mother, Elizabeth II, acceded to the throne in 1952, making him heir apparent. He was made Prince of Wales in 1958, and his investiture was held in 1969. And earlier you heard me mention that King Charles has agreed that an investigation begin into the royal family's involvement with the transatlantic slavery. And on numerous occasions, King Charles, even when he was a Prince Charles, did make some sort of mention of his sorrow of slavery. Also, Prince William has followed and said that slavery should never have happened. But we are moving on with our review. "2023 in Review, the human interest stories." And coming up, we pay homage to Tina Turner. Tina Turner, one of the most influential and successful singers of all time. She died at the age of 83 on May 25th after a long illness. Born Annie Mae Bullock on November 26, 1939, in Nutbush, Tennessee, Tina started singing as a teenager with Ike Turner's Kings of Rhythm Band. She married Ike in 1962, and they formed the duo Ike and Tina Turner, scoring hits such as River Deep, Mountain High, Proud Mary, and Nutbush City Limits. However, their relationship was marred by domestic abuse and infidelity, and Tina left Ike in 1976, divorcing him 2 years later. Tina launched a solo career in the 1980s, reinventing herself as a rock icon and achieving global fame with albums such as Private Dancer and Break Every Rule. She won 12 Grammy Awards, including 3 for Record of the Year, and she also got 8 for Best Female Rock Vocal Performance. Tina Turner also starred in movies such as Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and Last Action Hero, and performed on Broadway in The Acid Queen. She sold over 200 million records worldwide, making her one of the best-selling artists of all time, and she was inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991. And in the month of June, the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season got underway. 8 storms made landfall this year, with 3 of them, Harold, Idalia, and Ophelia, making landfall in the U.S. For the Eastern Caribbean, one of the most threatening storms this year was Tropical Storm Brett. In June 2023, a rare June record-breaking storm formed in the tropical Atlantic Ocean and threatened several islands in the Eastern Caribbean. Brett was the second named storm of the 2023 Atlantic season, and Brett developed and moved and affected the region. Brett's origins can be traced back to a low-pressure system that emerged off the coast of Africa on June 17. The system moved westward across the Atlantic, gradually becoming organized and acquiring a close circulation. On June 19, the system was classified as a tropical depression, Tropical Depression 3, by the National Hurricane Center, about 1,200 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. On June 20th, the Tropical Depression 3 strengthened into Tropical Storm Brett. Brett became the second named storm of the 2023 hurricane season. By June 20, 2023, a tropical storm watch was issued for Barbados, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Lucia. Brett had a maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour and was located about 800 miles east of Barbados. June 21, the tropical storm watch was elevated to tropical storm warning. June 22 to 23, Brett moved across the Windward Islands with its center passing north of Barbados and over northern St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Damage from storm gusts, heavy rains, floods and storm surge were reported across the impacted states. On June 23, Brett crossed the island arc into the Caribbean Sea, where he degenerated into a trough on Saturday, June 24th, according to a Tropical Storm Brett final situation report filed by SEDEMA. And as you know, over the years, I have produced a number of custom videos and bulletins talking about various aspects of hurricanes, how they are formed, how pressure affects hurricanes, how to interpret weather satellite imagery, understanding tropical storms, and about rainfall and all of that, and flood watches, what to look out for. And so it's one of those times, but Tropical Storm Brett became one, in fact, perhaps the only direct threat in the 23 hurricane season this year to the Eastern Caribbean. And in the month of August, on August 1st, the Ashanti King visited Trinidad and Tobago. King Asante Hene Otofumo Osi Tutu II, King of the Asante and Ashanti people in Ghana, arrived in Trinidad and Tobago to a tumultuous welcome, great pomp and ceremony at the ceremony on Sunday. King Asante Royal paid a courtesy call to President Christine Kangalu at the President's house at St. Anne's, Port of Spain. The Ashanti King was in Trinidad for 7 days and participated in several cultural activities, including an emancipation procession to the Emancipation Village at the Queen Park, Savannah. And the royal visitor also visited Fort George, where his relatives designed and built a wooden signal station in 1833. And in more human interest stories, on August 25th, descendants of the Gladstone family went to Guyana to offer a formal apology on behalf of their ancestors who enslaved Africans in Guyana and the Caribbean. According to the Associated Press, the descendants of a 19th century Scottish sugar and coffee planter who owned thousands of slaves in Guyana apologized for the sins of their ancestor, calling slavery a crime against humanity with lasting negative impacts. Charles Gladstone, a descendant of a former plantation owner, John Gladstone, traveled to Guyana from Britain with 5 relatives to offer the formal apology. As the heirs of the late British slave owner John Gladstone for the historical injustices for both slavery and indentureship. It is with deep shame and regret that we acknowledge our ancestors' involvement in this crime, and with heartfelt sincerity, we apologize to the descendants of the enslaved in Guyana, he told an audience at the University of Guyana. In doing so, we acknowledge slavery's continuing impact on the daily lives of many. According to the Associated Press, neither Guyana President Irfan Ali, who earlier demanded reparations and lashed out at the descendants of European slave traders, nor other senior government officials were in the audience of a couple hundred students, university staff members, and representatives of grassroots organizations. Meantime, the Washington Informer reported that John Gladstone, the father of the 4-time British Prime Minister William Gladstone, owned 2,500 slaves and, according to the UK Guardian, was the 5th largest beneficiary of the 20 million fund set aside by the British government to compensate planters when the Slavery Abolition Act was passed in 1833. In case you're wondering about the time, it's 8 minutes moving up on 11 o'clock here in the United Kingdom and the rest of the British Isles, and we are counting down the final moments of 2023 with a special end of year New Year's Eve program 2023 in review, the human interest stories, and we have reached the month of September. Stand by for more from the host with the most.
He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large.
2023 in review, the human interest story.
4 Corners, the Dread Podcast.
And in the month of September, I published a proposal for a year-long solemn event to observe the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Prohibited and Unlawful Societies and Associations Act 32 of 1974, commonly known as the Dread Act. And the solemn observation was called to begin November 19, 2023, and to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Dread Act next year, November 19, 2024. I also submitted a 10-point program which can be used to help organizers, various groups, to begin thinking about ways in which the 50th anniversary could be observed. And I'll just go through some of them for you in a moment. Right, so amongst the 10-point program, number 1, organize a series of public lectures, panel discussions, film screenings, podcasts, and exhibitions on the history, culture, and legacy of the Rastafari movement in Dominica and the Caribbean. Invite scholars, activists, artists, community leaders to share their perspectives and experiences. Point number 2, highlight the stories of those who suffered under the Dread Act and those who resisted it. Number 3, launch a campaign to raise awareness and funds for the restoration and preservation of historical sites and monuments related to the Rastafari movement in Dominica, such as the Nyabingi Tabernacle and the Dread House in Funkule, and also the graves of fallen Rastafari martyrs. Number 4, seek support from local and international organizations such as UNESCO, CARICOM, and the Rastafari Global Secretariat. Number 5, create a commemorative book, documentary, or website that documents the history, impact, and the legacy of the Dread Act and the Rastafari movement in Dominica. Include oral histories, archival materials, photographs, artwork, and the testimonies from survivors, witnesses, and descendants of those affected by the Dread Act was point number 6. And point number 7, publish or distribute the book, documentary, or website to schools, libraries, and media outlets and online platforms. Point number 8, organize a cultural festival or concert that celebrates the contributions of Rastafari to Dominica's music, art, literature, and cuisine. And point number 9, showcase local and regional Rastafari talents such as reggae bands, poets, painters, sculptors, and chefs. And point number 10, invite guests from other Caribbean islands and countries with significant Rastafari populations such as Jamaica, Ethiopia, Brazil, and South Africa. Promote unity, harmony, and respect among the different faiths and cultures. And that was just overview of some of the suggestions I offered to the public in how various groups could observe the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Unlawful Prohibited Societies and Associations Act 1974, which was basically aimed at dreadlocked persons. And at the moment, I'm working on the final edition of my book, Dread Rastafari and Ethiopia, and I'm hoping that by November 19, 2024, I will be able to launch it on the internet. In the meantime, I've produced a number of infomercials or mini documentaries on various aspects of dreadism in Dominica, Rastafari in general, and you can go to my Dread Rastafari Ethiopia page or to my website or to the Four Corners page and website, and you can learn much more about activities and ideas towards this venture. Well, it's already 11 o'clock here in the United Kingdom and the rest of the British Isles. 11 o'clock, that means we are counting down the final hour to 2024. Also in September, on September 27, a historic meeting of Parliament, Mistress Sivani Burton, a nominee of the Roosevelt Skerritt-led administration, was duly elected as the first female and indigenous president of the Commonwealth of Dominica by 20 members during the 5th meeting of the first session of the 11th sitting of Parliament. And according to Dominican-born historian and anthropologist Dr. Lennox Honeychurch, it is 349 years since the island last had an indigenous Kalinago head of state or island chief. The last indigenous leader responsible for the island was Thomas Carib Warner, who was murdered by his half-brother Philip Warner in 1764. And in October, Her Excellency Sivani Burton, DAH, President of the Commonwealth of Dominica, delivered her first inaugural address as head of state at the State House Conference Center following the swearing-in ceremony on October 2, 2023. Amid inclement weather pushed in from the effects of Tropical Storm Philippe passing northeast of the region and the strains of the brass section of the government band blowing a peal of trumpets through the spacious State House Conference Center, and as the fanfare signaled the arrival of President-elect to take the formal oath of office administered by Her Ladyship the Honorable Justice Jacqueline Josiah Graham, resident High Court Judge. Mrs. Burton was accompanied by her husband, dressed in a black suit, white tie and Creole-themed tie, while Mrs. Burton wore a resplendent wob duet and matching headpiece for the occasion. The newly installed Dominican head of state in her remarks that the Parliament's decision to appoint her as President of Dominica was historic and monumental and consequential for all of us as a nation, she said, adding, "My joy is however tempered by the enormity of this moment in the history of our country." President Burton referenced the support of her husband, children, government officials, friends and the Kalinago community and her deceased parents, by whom she was nurtured growing up, and asked the nation of Dominica to pray for her as she embarked on her presidential career to continue to unify our country. Among concerns of President Burton are the effects of global warming, global economic instability, challenges to the rule of law, and the rise of artificial intelligence and the deepening divide amongst our people. President Burton issued a call to action to Dominicans. She said, I am conscious of the fact that as a small island developing state, we must be visionary. We must be agile, innovative, and bold as we chart our course in the world. She said, adding, to this end, we must use all the tools at our disposal, particularly our human resources, both here and in the diaspora, to find solutions to the challenges that we face as a nation. With this in mind, I urge our government to continue to build on the extraordinary promise to make this island the first climate resilient country in the world. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Skerritt, in his remarks at the ceremony, assured Her Excellency President Burton, saying, I pledge to you my support and that of the party and the government that I lead. I want to say to you that I may not see you through the end of your term, but you can rest assured of my very best wishes in whatever capacity I serve from this day forward. I am confident that you will serve our beloved country with pride and distinction and embrace the responsibilities to promote a spirit of unity and harmony among all Dominicans, he said. And if you're just wondering, you are listening to 2023 in Review, the Human Interest Stories on Four Corners, the Dread Podcast. And my name is Ross Albert Williams.
He's revolutionary, remarkable, and very large.
2023 in Review, the Human Interest Story.
Four Corners, the Dread Podcast.
And back here on the review, we're already in the month of October. Seven minutes moving down past 11. And the following subject should be a concern for everyone, especially persons who have been formerly colonized or fighting against colonialism. The next story is perhaps one of the biggest human interest stories, despite it being a political, military type story. But I think in this review, it deserves to be in the human interest story, because of the serious nature of the next item. On October 7, Hamas, the group that controls the Gaza Strip and which has been outlawed as a terrorist organization, staged a surprise attack on Israel. along with other Palestinian groups, kidnapping about 240 hostages, including children. The Hamas fighters stormed the border in a brazen assault that the Israeli authorities say killed about 1,200 people. Earlier, Hamas published footage showing its members capturing a number of Israeli soldiers during an attack on a military base on the border, firing thousands of rockets and sending gunmen into Israeli communities by land, sea, and air. The multi-pronged attack, coming a day after Israel marked the 50th anniversary of the surprise invasion on Yom Kippur, caught the Israeli military and security forces completely by surprise. The Israeli-Palestine conflict is a long-standing and complex dispute over land, identity, and security. It began in the late 19th century when Jewish and Arab nationalism clashed over the same territory. Britain, the United Nations, and other powers intervened but failed to resolve the conflict. Israel and its Arab neighbors fought several wars, resulting in Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. Palestinians resisted, demanding self-determination and statehood. Peace efforts such as the Oslo Accords face obstacles and violence. The US, the EU, and Arab countries have tried to mediate, but conflict remains unresolved. Despite the challenges, there are efforts to promote dialogue and coexistence between Israel and the Palestinians. The Israeli retaliation ground invasion of the Gaza Strip began on the evening of October 27, which some critics have dubbed the 2023 Israel-Hamas war. The stated goal of the invasion is to destroy Hamas and overthrow its governance of the Gaza Strip. The invasion has caused thousands of deaths and injuries, as well as massive displacement and destruction of cultural heritage. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 8,000 children have been killed and over 15,000 have been injured since the start of the war. Many children have also been orphaned, traumatized, and deprived of education and health care. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, more than 6,000 women have been killed and over 12,000 have been injured since the start of the war. Many women have also faced increased risk of gender-based violence, displacement, and poverty. The Committee to Protect Journalists, at least 100 journalists have been killed, over 100 have been injured since the start of the war. Most of the journalists killed were Palestinian, but 4 were Israeli and 3 were from Lebanon. Many journalists have also faced harassment, censorship, and detention by both sides of the conflict. The UN Relief Workers Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, over 135 of its staff members have been killed, and over 200 have been injured since the start of the war. UNRWA provides vital services to more than 1.4 million Palestinian refugees in Gaza, such as food, water, healthcare, and education. Many other humanitarian workers from different organizations have also been killed and injured whilst trying to deliver aid to the affected population. And according to the International Committee for Red Cross, there are still thousands of people missing or unaccounted for under the rubble of destroyed buildings in Gaza. The ICRC has been working with the Palestinian Red Crescent Society and other partners to search for and to identify the dead and the missing and to provide support to their families. The international community has called for a ceasefire and a peaceful resolution, but prospects seem bleak. The United States, meantime, has been a very strong supporter of Israel since the 1960s, providing it with financial, military and political aid. The U.S. has also used its veto power in the United Nations Security Council to protect Israel from resolutions condemning its actions. The U.S. has expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself whilst calling for a de-escalation and a two-state solution. However, some U.S. politicians and activists have questioned the amount and conditions of the aid given to Israel and have criticized its policies toward the Palestinians. The last arms shipment to Israel was on December 14, when the Pentagon tapped a Tiger team to rush weapons sales to Israel. The Biden administration dismissed concerns about harm to civilians in Gaza and bypassed the congressional review of the arms sale. However, the U.S. also blocked a shipment of more than 27,000 rifles intended for Israel's national police over concerns they could end up transferred to extreme settlers in the West Bank. And as we move on with the review, we're coming down to the end of this review. And also there's 45 minutes left in 2023. Okay, in October, Jamaica was rocked by a massive earthquake, measuring 5.2 on the Richter scale. According to CVMTV, based in Jamaica, the quake shook sections of Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, and the Bahamas. Meanwhile, the Jamaica Observer said a walkway that was once frequently used by pedestrians, including attorneys and police officers along Church Street in downtown Kingston, is now covered in debris from a damaged derelict building that was rattled by the earthquake. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, following initial assessments, said damage from the earthquake appears minor, but he revealed that all earthquake protocols had been activated. And before we move to November, remember on October 1st we had the initial launching of Four Corners. We had a program with Justice Irvin Andre where we remembered Ruthie Douglas, 23rd anniversary of his passing. And so far, Justice Irvin Andre has been our only guest on Four Corners, and we just like to thank him for his time.
He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large.
And we skip November and we go straight to December 7th, when we learned that British author and poet Benjamin Zephaniah had died at the age of 65. And Benjamin Zephaniah was a British writer and poet. And at the age of 65, he left this earth. He was well known for his dub poetry, which combined Jamaican rhythms and dialects with political and social themes. He was also an actor and musician, and a professor and a Rastafarian. He wrote several books, many books of poetry, novels, children's books, and he appeared on TV shows such as Peaky Blinders and The Lenny Henry Show and many other British daytime programs. He was awarded the Order of the British Empire in 2003, but he declined it, saying it reminded him of slavery and colonialism. He was also nominated for the post of Oxford Professor of Poetry in 2019, but he withdrew after controversy over his criminal record. Benjamin Zephaniah was a vocal supporter of various causes such as animal rights, veganism, and anti-racism and anti-war. He was considered one of the most influential and popular writers in Britain and was named one of the top 50 post-war writers by The Times in 2008. Benjamin Zephaniah was a British writer and poet. He was also an activist for various causes such as human rights, animal rights, anti-racism, and anti-war. He uses poetry and his voice to raise awareness and to challenge injustice and oppression. Some of his concerns and activism were he was a supporter of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and joined demonstrations calling for an end to Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands, describing the activism as the anti-apartheid movement. He was also a supporter of the BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement. He was a campaigner on issues of human rights and welfare and advised the British Council on aspects of school curriculum. He was a leading supporter of the Vegan Society and promoted veganism as a way of life that respects animals and the environment. He was also a critic of the British monarchy and the honour system and declined to accept the Order of British Empire in 2003, saying it reminded him of slavery and colonialism. He also withdrew from the nomination for the Oxford Professor of Poetry in 2019 after controversy of his criminal record. And these are just some of the concerns of Benjamin Zephaniah, who died at the age of 65 on December 7th. And with the time 28 minutes moving up to midnight, this is where we see what's happening around on the internet, what's happening on the riverbank at Thames Riverbank, the London Eye. I've got my television next to me. Let me just pop it on and see what's happening and find out what's happening with the weather as well. So stand by. This is Four Corners, the Dread Podcast, and you are tuned into 2023 in Review, the Human Interest Stories. Well, well, the message from the Met Office in the UK for Sunday, 31st December to Thursday, 4th January. Headline: showery through the evening, dry and bright on Monday. This evening, showers continuing throughout the evening, with a slight risk of thunder along the southern coast. These generally easing later, with most places dry and clear, sometimes after midnight. Winds staying strong overnight, especially along the coastlines. Chilly, a minimum temperature of 4 degrees. And your forecast for Monday, the 1st of January, for the south and the southeast. A dry start to the day with plenty of bright spells and easing winds, cloud thickening late in the morning, with rain arriving from the west during the afternoon. Heavy in places. Maximum temperature 10 degrees.
He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large.
"2023 in Review: The Human Interest Stories."
It's 23:30 here from our beautiful studios in Crawley, West Sussex in United Kingdom. It's 30 minutes before midnight, and it's a good time to perhaps thank you for being our company throughout the year. We do hope that you enjoyed. We do hope that you enjoyed our productions and our various podcasts and videos and posts on our various pages. We'd like to invite you to join us next year when when we shall do it all over again for you. And remember, you can also follow us on the various Facebook pages. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, where I post most of my productions. And maybe it's a good time to bring in a message from our executive producer, Tempe Williams. Stand by.
Wow, another year is upon us. 2024 Thank you, Albert Williams, for taking us down that end of your journey. And now we look forward to a new year, new expectations, new beginnings. Thank you again, Albert Williams. Thank you, listeners. Welcome 2024. This is Tempe Williams signing out. Wow.
Well, just like to thank executive producer Tempe Williams for those remarks there. A little ahead of schedule, but who knows? We're standing by. We're creeping up towards the midnight hour. Well, maybe we can just use this time to reflect on the last 365 days. And as you know, January is related to the Janus, the Greek mythology in Janus, the god that looks forward and looks back at the same time. And it's always good. I always look forward to a new year myself, very much as I look forward to a new day. I can remember way back in the day when I was active with the Dominica Writers Guild, and I was Eversley Collier was one of our members, and he told me that every year he aims to get a certificate in at least something, you know. And that was maybe 40, 50 years ago. So, but it stuck with me all those years there. And self-improvements should always be at the top of one's priority. And if you look at using a year, for example, as a kind of a measure or a task, what am I going to do this year? What have I done last year? Have you reviewed your own performance in various fields last year, and what do you think? Have you made up your mind to improve, or are you just going to go into a new year with the same attitude, with no improvement at all? So for me, I've got some goals that I want to improve on. I want to make much more use of my musical instruments, perhaps do more recording, at least do more rehearsing. I've not been rehearsing as regular as I used to 10, 12 years ago, but you know, maybe now's the time to get back into keyboard studies. You know, when I came to England in 2004, I couldn't play keyboard at all. So I'm self-taught keyboard player after buying many books, watching many videos. You know, eventually you get the hang of it and you master it. And perhaps one of the goals of this year would be to master reading music. I remember back in the day too, I had a teacher, online teacher, Jermaine Greggs, the creator of Hear and Play Music. I followed his site quite a bit, and I have a number of his DVDs and instruction books on how to play the keyboards, the piano, and the organ. And he said that if you make up your mind to every day try to learn a piece of music every day, after 6-7 months you should be able to read music fluently. And that is because you get over the initial resistance of the brain to not wanting to work that hard to learn something that easy. And I have not really put it to use, but maybe I should do that in the new year. Try to learn a piece of music every day. I mean, once you get the basics down, what are the 5 lines for? What are the four spaces, what are the ledger lines, what are they called, those above the staff and those below the staff. What are the various markings you can see on a piece of music? You know, what clef is it in? Is it in the G clef or in the C clef? Is it the bass or in the treble clef? You know, and things like that. And you know, learning the various notes. You know, you have the quaver notes, or you have the double notes. You know, you have other notes that last four beats, and then you have the 28 and 62, and you know, so music is something you have to really make time for if you want to learn about the meditation of music. And that goes for singing as well. You know, vocaling is not just about singing, shouting. You have to, if it's possible, you should learn about the various types of voice, the chest voice, the head voice, you know, and the whole art of becoming a vocalist. What you need to do, you know, to maintain your voice, to train your voice, and how you should go about learning songs. You know, for instance, if you're a person like me who, you know, likes to do karaoke now and then, you tune into a YouTube page and you pick a karaoke song. More often than not, you're gonna find that the key that the karaoke song is in doesn't suit you. But you will suit the key because you want to sing the song. So it could be too high, it could be too low, it could be just, you know, a semitone too high or semitone too low. But when it comes to rehearsing your own music, you should know what key you're singing in, what is the range of your own vocal abilities, and it's more comfortable to sing within your range than to sing at a range that is too high for you or even too low for you. So as a vocalist, one of the first things you have to know is what type of vocals are you? What are you, a bass, alto, contralto, tenor? And then within that aspect, then you know my keys in A sharp or D minor or a G, you know. So when it comes to music, that could be and vocaling. This year might be the year that you put a lot of emphasis into learning an instrument. You know, learning to play an instrument on your own is not as easy as it sounds. I learned keyboard on my own. But I think it's even more difficult to learn to play guitar on your own. And I've been playing guitar for for over 40 years, and I'm not as good as I could be, but I can get better with being focused, especially in lead guitar, and learning blues and soul, and learning how to play lead guitar, rock band, rock lead guitar, and also blues guitar. Leading in blues guitar is very exciting. I find my exploration of blues and rhythm and blues and jazz, you know, it really stretches your imagination about what you can do with music. So I have a kind of all-round appreciation for music, different types of music. And even when you go to the Orient or to the Middle East and you listen to that kind of music, you know, if you listen long enough, you're gonna feel the rhythm, you're gonna feel the contours of that party, of that music from that part of the world. Because when you look at our own calypso and reggae and kadas and calypso, you know, these sounds are unique, and you know, it's just, who know that strumming down, you know, on a 1-2 rhythm could create a music like reggae, you know. And then you have writing, you know, a person like me that has so many hobbies, writing is one of them, you know. Maybe you could perhaps do a course or a degree program in writing in English or Spanish, or, you know, some sort of self-improvement is also working. And then I also have my gym, which I need to pay more attention to. Again, gym is a bit like learning a musical instrument, learning about the body and how the body responds to resistance training and the nutrition that goes into bodybuilding, the frequency of training and including rest, all of that really goes into becoming a bodybuilder. You can approach it with no knowledge at all, and you can injure yourself. So you have to kind of get some guidance. As they say, if you're going to embark on any exercise program, make sure you get your doctor's approval, look over you, that you have no outstanding ailments that could pop up or could be strained. So we talked about music, talk about the gym. Is there anybody out there? Anybody out there? I don't think so. I see I have two love reactions. But anyhow, it's 18 minutes moving up on midnight. And definitely, this is 2023 in review, the human interest stories, and I am Albert Williams. And maybe it's a good time to say thank you to all our guests who appeared on our previous podcast, the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast. Guests like Rasmo, Silo Sorrendo. We also had Greg Banis, Slash Banis, and many others, And we'd like to thank also persons who have assisted us in more ways than one. Thank my wife, Tempe. I wish that she would, in the new year, have some more restoration to her health. And we thank the carers, the bin men, the other council workers who look after us, maintain our house and the street where we live. I would just like to thank everyone who made 2023 for us what it was. And we're looking forward to 2024 with good health and happiness within the context of 21st century living. It's 10 minutes moving up on midnight here, and we are counting down the final moments of 2023. If you have any opinions you'd like to share, then please do so in the comment box before this program comes to an end at just after midnight.
Best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge.
And if you're just joining us, we are in the final moments of episode number 6 of Four Corners, the Dread podcast. And today from 10 p.m. we had 2023 in review, the human interest stories, and it's now 6 minutes moving up to midnight. That's 6 minutes left on this show and 6 minutes left in this New Year's Eve. The eve of the 2024. So if you're just joining us, remember you can also listen to this episode on playback, and I would advise you to have your headphones on, or at least have a good sound system when you're listening to this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Four Corners, the Dread podcast in complete stereo. Five minutes moving up on midnight. And of course, if you're just joining us, at the top of the program, we had a segment on homage to some great Dominicans that passed away this year. And we followed this with other highlights of the year of human interest stories that occurred throughout the year. And we're just chilling out now in the final minutes of the year. We come to the end of the broadcast just after midnight. When I will be going to get some well-deserved rest, I'll be taking my January 1st at home, feet up, thinking about the future. And of course, you know, our three words is awareness, advocacy, and action. We are an advocacy group. I defend the rights of indigenous people. I defend the rights of black people. I defend the rights of oppressed people. And I speak up for human rights and for freedom from violence, and I call for the war to stop and for the siege to stop against the people of Palestine. And this program also is a Rastafari program. It was first produced with the intention of promoting activities for the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Prohibited and Unlawful Societies and Associations Act 32 of 1974 in Dominica, in which a number of persons that had dreadlocks were victimized by the authorities, and many other activities happened during those years. So we'll be producing a book at the end of by November next year called Dread Rastafari and Ethiopia. You can look out for that. It is now midnight in the United Kingdom, and it's now 2024. And here's a message from the executive producer, Tempe Williams. You heard it early on and hear it right now.
2024. Thank you, Albert Williams, for taking us down that end of your journey. And now we look forward to a new year, new expectations, new beginnings. Thank you again, Albert Williams. Thank you, listeners. Welcome 2024. This is Tempe Williams signing out.
And let me join my wife, Tempe Williams, in welcoming 2024. I wish I could wish you a happy new year. But how can I wish you a happy new year when there's so much war and destruction on our doorstep? In 1948, we were promised human rights. We were promised freedom from genocide by the Genocide Convention. In 1948, the State of Israel and the State of South Africa were both started to unleash enough terrorism on the people of Africa and the Middle East. Where is the Declaration of Human Rights? How long shall the people of Palestine continue to be bombed, men, women, and children, by the dozens, by the hundreds every day? We must remember that whilst we go about enjoying the festivities, that some of us are not so lucky. And as a matter of fact, what is happening in Palestine could happen to you. We know the government can tell you what to do, when to do, and governments change, and we have to be aware. We have to stand up for human rights wherever they are being violated. My name is Ross Albert Williams. Peace and love in 2024. I'm signing out.
Remarkable. And very large. Large and in charge.
2023 in review. The human interest story.
Four Corners. The Dread Podcast.
2023 in review. The human interest story.
Four Corners.